Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra, and welcome to Royal Film Fridays, a new series on my channel where I review and recommend the best and the worst films, documentaries, and television series about royalty. In this week's edition of Royal Film Fridays is a 2014 controversial film, Grace of Monaco, directed by Mr. Olivier Dunn and written by Mr. Arash Amel. The film stars Nicole Kidman as Princess Grace, Tim Roth as Prince Rainier III, Frank Langella as Father Tucker, Parker Posey as Madge, and Sir Derek Jacoby as Count Fernando. The official synopsis for the film reads as follows, quote, Grace Kelly is a huge movie star with a promise of a glittering career when she marries Prince Rainier III of Monaco in 1956. 6 years later, with her marriage in serious difficulty, Alfred Hitchcock offers her the chance to return to Hollywood to play the role of Marnie in his next film. But France is also threatening to annex Monaco, the tiny principality where she became the princess. Grace is torn and forced to choose between the creative flame that still burns within her and her role as Her Serene Highness, Princess of Monaco. End quote. On May 14, 2014, Grace of Monaco officially opened the 67th Cannes Film Festival. 6 hours later, the film reviews were in. Brutal. The $30 million film had a worldwide gross of $27.5 million. The film bombed. But that was to be expected. The film was a tragic mess from the very beginning, even though the screenplay was on the famous 2012 Blacklist. For those of you who may not know, the Blacklist is a yearly roundup of the best unproduced screenplays, making the, quote, rounds in Hollywood as voted by producers, end quote. In 2005, Franklin Leonard, a film executive, decided to create a spreadsheet of the best unproduced scripts in Hollywood and forward the list to his fellow producers in the industry. So, back to Grace of Monaco. Where did it all go wrong? Why was Grace of Monaco such a massive failure? Well, in my opinion, there were 4 major issues: the script, the director, the princely family of Monaco, and the film's U.S. distributor. So let's begin with the script, written by Arash Amel. While the official synopsis for Grace of Monaco sounds interesting, the film is nothing like the pitch. For me, the film reads, or rather plays out, as follows. The film opens with a direct quote from Princess Grace. Then, after a long, unnecessary scene, the director, Olivier Dunn, cuts to the year 1961, when Alfred Hitchcock shows up at the Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, Grace's modest 235-room palace overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, to offer her the lead role in the upcoming film Marnie. Grace is portrayed as a bored, restless housewife in a marriage that is falling apart, who can barely speak French, nor does she know the history of her new country that she's been living in for the past 6 years, with 2 kids and absolutely nothing to do. So when Hitchcock offers a role to an enthusiastic Grace, she feels as if she can live again. She's been saved by Alfred Hitchcock. Yay! Meanwhile, her husband, Prince Rainier III, who is portrayed as a chain-smoking, cognac-loving man with serious anger issues, is having a wee bit of an issue with the President of the French Republic, Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle threatens to impose French taxation on Monaco and French companies residing in the tiny principality and reclaim the principality by force. Anyway, de Gaulle gives Prince Rainier III an ultimatum. You have 6 months or else. So the situation has escalated. De Gaulle is behaving like a bully and decides to set up a blockade along the border with Monaco. To make matters worse, someone behind palace walls, a spy, is trying to sabotage Prince Rainier III and the future of the Principality of Monaco. But thankfully, Grace is there to save the day. After turning down the lead role in the movie Marnie, Grace decides that she's going to save her marriage by learning the French language, etiquette, protocol, and the history of Monaco from her new best friend, Count Fernando. Moreover, knowing that the future of Monaco is in danger, Grace then decides to save Monaco by throwing the biggest and most fabulous international Red Cross ball ever. How is she going to do that, you may ask? Well, by inviting anyone who's everyone from around the world to attend, including Charles de Gaulle, who cannot say no, right? It's the night of the ball. De Gaulle shows up. then Grace and Renier. Grace sees de Gaulle standing at the entrance to the ball. She squints her eyes, and in Grace's mind, it's game on. Knowing that de Gaulle is watching her, Grace charms a Monegasque crowd who have been waiting outside the ball for hours. With her smile and grace, no pun intended, while Charles de Gaulle just stands there at the entrance to the ball, completely baffled. Cut to the next scene. The International Red Cross ball is in full swing. Dignitaries, celebrities, millionaires, politicians, everyone is there. Maria Callas is now performing on stage. A nervous Grace knows that she has to take the stage to give a speech to convince de Gaulle in a subtle way to back off from annexing Monaco. 5 minutes later, Grace is still on stage giving a long-winded, overdramatic speech that, well, to be honest with you, made no sense whatsoever. She then glares at Charles de Gaulle, who seems just as confused as the audience watching the 2014 Grace of Monaco film, even though he's back in 1962. Anyway, as Grace is still talking and glaring at Charles de Gaulle, she knows that she has defeated him with her boring speech, and she was right. So, 7 months later, in May 1963, Charles de Gaulle says, "Okay, fine, I'll back off," lifts the blockade, and that pesky tax situation is over. Best of all, the relationship between Princess Grace and Prince Rainier III is stronger than ever. The end. Oh boy. As I mentioned before, the original Grace of Monaco script was on the 2012 blacklist. However, during the filming, Olivier Dunn, the director, made some changes. No, scratch that. He made multiple changes throughout the filming of the movie. So let's talk about Olivier Dunn, the man who was at the helm of one of the worst films ever made. The second and third reasons why Grace of Monaco was such a massive failure was due to Olivier Dunn and his public arguments with members of the princely family of Monaco. It all began with the decision to hire Mr. Dunn, a little man with an inflated ego after the success of his last film, La Vie en Rose. So let's start from the beginning. On January 9th, 2012, it was announced that Mr. Dunn had signed on to direct the film Grace of Monaco, with Pierre-Ange Lee Pogam producing alongside Arash, Amel, and Uday Chopra. Mr. Pogam used $15 million of his own money to fund the film. All seems to be going well, right? Not exactly. Well, 1 year and 5 days later, His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco, Her Royal Highness Princess Caroline of Hanover, and Her Serene Highness Princess Stephanie of Monaco issued a press release stating they were none too pleased with the script, and in particular, Mr. Olivier Dunn. On January 13, 2013, the Palais Princier issued a press release stating that the family, quote, does not endorse, end quote, the film and the script, and quote, it is not a biopic, but recounts a page rewritten, unnecessarily glamorizes the history of the Principality of Monaco and their families with both significant historical inaccuracies and a series of scenes that are purely fictional, end quote. The press release goes on to note that the princely family has been, quote, in no way heavily involved in this project that is supposedly is devoted to their parents. The Palais has received the script from the producers and requested numerous times for changes for accuracy, end quote. Unfortunately, the requests were not taken into consideration by Mr. Olivier Dunn and the producers of Grace of Monaco. The press release goes on to say, quote, the Palais cannot accept that today, for commercial reasons, the producers of the film imply that they have received their Serene Highnesses' full support. This is not the case, end quote. So 1 week later, Olivier Dunn tells his side of the story to a French newspaper. When asked about the statement released by the princely family of Monaco, Mr. Dunn replied, quote, we never asked them to endorse anything. 3 weeks after the start of filming, we met Prince Albert II and Princess Caroline at the palace. With respect, we also sent them the script. They made a few remarks. For those who have appeared relevant, we came back to them with corrections, but not all, end quote. The journalist asks, for example? Don replies, quote, they wanted me not to put too much emphasis on feelings of anti-France Monaco at the time. The film takes place in 1962. France and Monaco were going through a political crisis. The reporter then asks, quote, they also accuse you of having rewritten and glamorizing the history of Monaco. Olivier Dunn replies, quote, it is not I who glamorizes the principality, they, the principality, do it themselves. But I do not want controversy. I just want to be regarded as an artist who claims his freedom and the right to fiction. Of course, there are historical inaccuracies. General de Gaulle has never set foot at an international Red Cross ball. But I needed to tell my story, end quote. The journalist then asked, quote, "It is perhaps that is why they are precisely displeased?" And Don replies, quote, "I am not a journalist nor historian. I am an artist. I have not made a biopic. I hate biopics in general. You know, Albert, more than Caroline, is too attached to the historical accuracy side. I need my freedom. I am an artist and I need my freedom," end quote. So, after the article was published, the permits for pickup shots in Monaco were pulled. Principal photography began in Monaco at the end of May 2012. Once the permits were denied, Mr. Dunn and the producers panicked. Eventually, the pickup shots were filmed in Menton and Grasse, France. The fourth reason why Grace of Monaco was such a massive failure: the Weinstein Company and the director's public arguments with Bob and Harvey. Yeah, this is bad. So, while the pickup shots were being filmed, and yes, some of the filming with the lead cast had to be reshot, the Weinstein Company, yes, the infamous brothers Bob and Harvey's company that used to own Miramax Films, bought the U.S. distribution rights. And, well, that is when, in my opinion, things went really downhill. On October 13th, 2013, the Weinstein Company released the trailer for Grace of Monaco without Mr. Olivier Dunn knowing. Moreover, somehow the company got their grubby little hands on a rough cut of the film and re-edited it. When Mr. Dunn found out about the release of the trailer without his permission, he once again whined to the French press, stating that he had absolutely nothing to do with the bad trailer, which in my opinion looked like a bad Chanel No. 5 advertisement, nor with the re-editing of the film. When a journalist from the French newspaper Liberation asked about how he felt when he heard the news that Grace of Monaco release date was pushed back yet again until the spring of 2014, Mr. Dunn gave a flippant reply, quote, "I don't care. They can release it when they want. It's my right to struggle, but when you confront an American distributor like the Weinstein Company without naming names, there is not much you can do," end quote. 2 months before Grace of Monaco was scheduled to open the Cannes Film Festival, Mr. Dunn released his own trailer. It was a slight improvement over the Weinstein Company version, and when he made a comment about the Weinstein Company version of the trailer, he used a lot of bad words. Mainly, the trailer was the F word and the S word, and that Bob and Harvey were Fs. I'm pretty sure you can figure out what he said. It wasn't very nice. So, entering back the princely family of Monaco in April 2014, after seeing both trailers, the members of the princely family of Monaco released another statement calling the film a, quote, "farce. Based on the trailers alone, only confirms the total fictional nature of the film," end quote. And as if there weren't enough drama by now, or rather then, 2 weeks later, the Weinstein Company and Mr. Dunn had a public feud over the final cut of the film. And it was bad. During the feud, The Hollywood Reporter confirmed that the movie had been, quote, "virtually disowned by the U.S. distributor, the Weinstein Company, with Harvey Weinstein threatening not to release the current European edit, which Olivier Dunn wants his version released in the U.S., end quote. So now, back to the night of May 14th, 2014, the opening night of the famous Cannes Film Festival. Everyone shows up except for the members of the princely family of Monaco, who have always attended the Cannes Film Festival, but not in 2014. So back to the opening night of the Cannes Film Festival and the film Grace of Monaco. The director, stars, and the producers of the film take their seats and the lights go down, and the film opens with a quote by the late Princess Grace. Then a shot of a dirt road somewhere in the south of France, and 1 hour and 43 minutes later, polite, slow applause from the audience. Attendees start talking under their breaths, then snickers and sneers. Industry critics run out of the theater back to their hotel rooms to give their thoughts about the film Grace of Monaco. Hours later, the film reviews from Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, etc. are in. Brutal. One critic said the film was a, quote, breathtaking catastrophe, while another called the film, quote, so wooden that it is a fire risk, end quote. The overall reason, in my opinion, why Grace of Monaco failed was due to one man, Olivier Dunn. His arrogance, disregard for the truth, constant script changes, and public arguments with members of the princely family of Monaco and the Weinstein Company. Moreover, Mr. Dunn's direction style was all over the place. The film looked like 3 different people directed the film. Another problem with the film? The lighting. In my opinion, too many of the scenes, specifically the scenes with Tim Roth, are so dark, it's hard to see the actors. Also, halfway through the film, Mr. Dunn becomes obsessed with extreme close-ups of Nicole Kidman. In some scenes, I swear I could see her pores, and her bloodshot eyes were so obvious, it was distracting. I don't know what he was thinking. And I'm not the only one who noticed Olivier Dunn's bizarre obsession. A critic from the British newspaper, The Guardian, wrote, quote, Mr. Dunn spends an inordinate amount of time shoving his lens right into Miss Kidman's face, focusing on her bloodshot eyes, drooling over her oddly distinctive upper lip, daring someone to whisper out loud, that's not Grace Kelly, that's a woman who peed on Zac Efron, end quote. So yeah, at the end of the day, Olivier Dunn, oh my gosh, destroyed this film, in my opinion. And honestly, if Ed Wood were still alive, he would have been a better director of Grace of Monaco than Olivier Dunn. Let's just say that. And if you know who Ed Wood is, you get the joke. If not, look up Ed Wood. Now, additional problems with the film. The cast. All wrong. Except for Nicole Kidman. Honestly, she tried her best with what she had. And I cannot blame her for the utter failure of this film. Tim Roth, great actor. Horrible as Prince Rainier III. Oh my gosh, I don't know what the casting director was thinking about suggesting Tim Roth or whoever decided to choose him to play Prince Rainier. Ugh, I hope they're not working again. Wait, that was Olivier Dunn. You really don't see him much anymore. Anyway, Tim Roth portrayed Prince Rainier III in such a cold, distant, and angry and arrogant manner that it was so frustrating to watch because for those of you who know about Prince Rainier or actually met Prince Rainier, he's not like that. He was just a very kind and gentle man. And the way Tim Roth played him, I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe he thought he was back on the set of Reservoir Dogs. I don't know. It was just bad. Frank Langella, another legendary actor, but his portrayal as Father Tucker left me wondering if Mr. Langella took a Valium an hour before shooting each and every one of his scenes. And I don't mean to be mean, but honestly, his delivery in this film was so incredibly flat, and it's baffling to me because Mr. Langella is such a talented actor and he's got such great range. But in this film, there was no emotion. In each of his scenes, it looked like he was about to fall asleep. In fact, his performance made me sleepy. It was so bad. Oh my gosh. Parker Posey as Madge. Horrible. Another great actress, but she completely failed in her portrayal as, I just mentioned it, Madge. And finally, Sir Derek Jacoby as Count Fernando. Oh gosh. You know, honestly, like Nicole, he did his best with what he had to work with. Enough said. The script. Awkward, inaccurate, painful, some of the worst lines in the history of films. For example, Charles de Gaulle on the phone with Prince Rainier III, telling him, quote, I'll send Monaco back to the Dark Ages, end quote. Or when Alfred Hitchcock shows up to the palace to see Grace, and Grace asks him, quote, do I look unhappy, Hitch, end quote. And Hitchcock replies, you look tired, Gracie, end quote. Yeah, it was that bad. So let me mention some positive aspects of this film, and there are 4. Cinematography, production design, location, and costume design. Beautiful. Well done. The film score? Annoying. Hated it. Awful. So, in conclusion, Grace of Monaco is a tragic mess of a film. As one critic wrote, quote, if you lock up your brain and throw away the key, the film is bearable, end quote. Now, I'm sure by now that you're thinking to yourself, but Alexandra, if the film is so awful, why recommend it? Why should I watch it? Well, if you're having a bad day and you want to watch a film that'll make you laugh and forget all your troubles, well then Grace of Monaco is the film for you. No, really, it is. Grace of Monaco is so bad that it's good. Or, as some would call it, Grace of Monaco is a cult craptastic film. I didn't make that last statement up, cult craptastic. My friends actually made it up, and it just sort of caught on with our group of friends. So I thought I'd share it with you. So now the question is, where to watch? Well, Grace of Monaco is available to watch on Amazon and Apple TV. And there you have it. Thank you all so much for joining me this week. I really appreciate it. I will be back next week with an all-new episode. And in next week's episode, I am going to cover a film about one of the most popular princesses to come onto the scene in the last, decade and a half? Yeah, decade and a half. And the film itself is fun and it's campy and it doesn't take itself too seriously. But I hope you like it. It's one of my favorite fun films to watch. So until then, have a wonderful week, everyone. And I will see you all next week.